Hello guys, once again it's Matt, and today we have another video. Thank you all the members, all the patrons. Make sure to subscribe and let's get into it. We are trying to hit 50,000 subscribers, so help me out there and let's go guys. Kind of a long video, so let's get going. Today we're going to talk about crank and notch. This is basically the continuation of the earlier video that I did yesterday, talking about how to evade missiles going cold and actually flying low. Those are more basic maneuvers and these are more advanced ones. So be aware that you might die a lot trying to do this before you get used to it. It feels fine, at least the crank, but you can get killed if you don't do the exact maneuver, you know? But anyway, these are the two best ways to actually compete and do BVR safely without dying. So let's talk about crank first. Crank, it is one of the most important ones, if not the most important one, since this one actually makes you be able to continue an attack head-on from very far away and flying high. Or even in a kind of lower distance situation, but that's another thing that we're going to talk about it later. What you need to do, the first thing is after you shoot the missile, so on an offensive approach to a target, on a head-on, from a long distance normally, you will turn to one side. So basically you will fire the missile and turn to one side. How much you will turn? Well, basically as much as possible. The max possible angle that you can do without losing the lock. The objective is to actually maintain the lock while you maintain the most possible turn angle that you can, okay? This is limited to the gimbal limit of your aircraft, of your radar. For example, the F-16 that we have in game has 120 degrees of gimbal limits on their radar, and the Yak-41 has 170. What does that mean? It means that the Yak-41 can turn more while maintaining the lock. And the more you turn, the better, okay? This will provide you with two things. One of them is that you are losing relative speed to your target or the missile, making they work harder and lose more energy to get you than you do to get them, basically, if they don't do the same, of course. This happens due to the increasing range that the missile or target needs to fly, due to your relative speed being slower to them. So you're not flying, in other words, basically, you're not flying towards them. So you are making them come more to you. They need to come to cover the distance that you are not covering anymore, right? Second thing is that not only you are making the missile lose energy with the distance because it needs to fly further away because you are decreasing the speed of your relative speed to them actually, but also with the curve that you are doing, making especially the missile, this is more for the missile, have to anticipate that turn, losing a lot of energy, you know? So it will try to turn ahead of you, losing more energy than flying straight to you if you stayed in a basically flying straight to the target or to the missile, right? So yeah, basically it will try to just anticipate your curve. So while it's doing that, it is trying to turn. Turning creates drag. It's losing its energy faster, making it more just easier overall to actually avoid the missile, okay? So this can be enhanced by 3 additional maneuvers. Doesn't mean that you need to fly the 3 of them additionally to the crank, but still they will help you a lot. One of them is actually maintaining full afterburner. So max power, making you fly further and faster to the side with that angle, and making the missile work even harder to anticipate you. So it will need to anticipate the point of impact, and you will, if you increase the speed or just maintain a very high speed, you will make it so that it has to turn even more, okay? So losing more energy, more drag. There is also a misconception that decreasing the power is better. I back in the day used to do that and think that was better, but it is not. It is better to just increase the speed as much as possible, making the missile work harder, okay? Second thing is that when you are flying higher, you can always lower the nose of the aircraft, making you lose energy. This will do 2 things as well. This will add speed, making the missile work even harder, due to the same reason as before, you know. And the lower altitude you are, you will make the missile work harder due to the increase in air pressure, meaning more drag for the missile. And a bonus on top of that is that thicker air means better turns for your aircraft. So if you really need to avoid a missile, it's better to fly a little bit lower to actually be able to have more air, more lift, and you can turn more. Another thing that you have to consider is that aircraft like an F-16, for example, they have a high compression in higher speeds. So if you really need to turn, you need to lower your airspeed first, So use your air brakes if you notice that you really need to turn for other missile or something like that. And the third thing that you can do additionally to the crank is from time to time, this is the most important one, to be honest, from time to time during the crank, to change basically sides. So you are cranking for the left, for example, switch to a right turn crank, inverting the sides that you are flying, doing the same maneuvers that I did, that I said, basically will destroy the energy that the missile have. Imagine what happens. The missile is anticipating the point really far from the left to a left turn, right? So the missile is turning right because it's coming for you. And it's really anticipating because you are really far away and you are losing altitude as well. So the missile is going to have to go to thicker air. And also then you all of a sudden changes direction for a 90-degree turn to the other side while maintaining the lock. This will make this will make the missile have to anticipate the same turn, the same thing that you were doing for the left to the right. So we will need to do a left turn in this case because it's coming for you again, to the left and anticipate a lot to the left. And I'll basically lose a lot of energy, or basically lose all of the energy that he already spent trying to anticipate a hit before. So this will make the missile turn like a 90-degree turn. And you also will do that, but you have more energy than a missile, right? You are an aircraft. So normally if you have fuel at least, you will have more energy than that. So yeah, it will give you also a second chance of firing another shot of a missile while you are passing over that turn. So yeah, it's obviously a good thing as well. It must be quick though, because you don't want to be in this hot position going for the missile for too long, because this will help the missile a lot, okay? So this will severely increase your chances of staying alive, especially for the missiles that we have in game. It is really, really, really a good maneuver to do. But for a very long distance. Don't do this for up close, okay? And we are going to talk about why that reason is in a soonish kind of situation that we're going to talk about here after these examples. So here we have an example. I am doing the crank, as you're going to see. I fire the missile, turn to the left, for example, and try to stay looking at the radar screen on the right side there and maintaining the radar lock on the maximum possible gimbal without I losing the lock. I'm not losing altitude, not doing anything. Just to show to you how basic this can be. I'm just making sure that I'm cranking for the left to the right again, while he's not doing anything. He's not cranking. So I did the switch for a right crank, and I continue to fire, to fire the afterburners, and then I hit the ground. I hit the missile. It was against an ER, man, a MiG-20, Yak-41 against an R-27 ER. So as you see, it is a very good maneuver. Again, from further away, I'm going to fire the missile. So pay attention, I'm going to fire the missile, turn to the side, and here it's an example of a higher kind of aggressive crank. So yeah, I just went downwards, and I will pick up the speed again, while he's doing the crank as well. He's also doing the crank, but I'm going to do a better crank than him. So I'm losing altitude, increasing the speed, evaded the missile there, because I saw he's coming, and I hit the target. So, very, very good, as you see, very effective. And if you don't do in the right way, or maybe you are not doing enough, maybe you are doing from an upper closer distance, just not upper closer, like a closer distance, If you do this from up close, it will not work. As you see here, I'm doing kind of an aggressive one. You will see that I'm doing an aggressive one. I kind of take off the afterburner, so don't ignore me for that. But the missile will hit me, and that's where you need the notch. Even though I killed him, it wasn't enough. I don't want this to happen. I don't want to die and have to eject, right? So then we go for the crank, the notch, sorry. The notch, it is basically the extension of the crank, okay? It is a mix of maneuvers that you will do to complement a crank. It will be kind of the same idea of the crank, but doing more aggressively. And the objective here is to primarily make the enemy lose the lock. If he loses the lock, the probable most important thing that you need to do is that the missile will lose its lock and it will just explode in the air, normally. Of course, there are some missiles out there like the R-27 that can like reacquire the lock afterwards and still kill you, so you have to be careful, right? But yeah, the primary thing is to lose the lock. So the first thing that you need to do is fly perpendicular to the target, making him lose the lock in most cases, due to the pulse Doppler radar main drawback, right? It basically cannot, pulse Doppler radars, if you don't know, they cannot see standing still targets normally for them, you know? They can be having a speed, but if the target itself is standing still, it cannot see it. This is debatable because it depends on the radar. Obviously, the more modern the radar is, the more it can actually see these relative standing still flying targets, right? But still the principle is the same. The older the aircraft, normally it is easier to make it lose the lock. For example, F4J is easier to make it lose the lock than an F-16. Flying 90 degrees to the target is the top goal here, okay? Flying perpendicular to the target. So you will turn to the left, to the right, it doesn't matter, like the crank, but making a full 90-degree turn. This will make your relative speed to the target come close to 0 kilometers per hour, making him lose the lock, and in most cases, if the missile is already in the air, it will self-explode. It is complemented with a nosedive and a change in direction with a split S maneuver, going down, obviously, with a 90 degrees to the target, okay? You can keep doing that after getting some speed again, the same way that you did with the crank, changing sides, but you don't want to be slow. You want to still have the ability to fight if needed, and this will make the enemy lose lock, and if not, it is going to help you basically avoid the missile, at least, right? It is as if it was a very aggressive crank, but normally it will already be enough to lose the lock. There are some catches to it, but still, you know, normally it will be enough for that. The major thing is that we need to just talk about how normally this maneuver will be added to your maneuvers, right? The normal cranks might be not enough, as I said. Going cold might be too dangerous because it's too close, and the target will be just up on your 6. Flying low is not possible. For example, these are situations where notching is actually the best maneuver out there for radar missiles. So do the notch if there is one of these situations, okay? Too close to the target, not flying low enough, you know, just flying high normally, or if you are in a situation that a target can get in your 6 if you go cold and make the missile lose like that. Of course, they can be also added the maneuver together with chaff as well, which always helps. So here we have an explanation or an example of it. It's too close for us to actually do just the crank. I need to do more. And if I do turn cold, the guy will be on my 6 and he will fire an IR missile. So I just fly perpendicular to it, as you see, flying downwards like a crank. But then I just fire the chaff, split as maneuver to the other side, maintain the speed, and just get speed again. If I want to, I can do it again. Remember, this is also an example that you don't want to go into the merge again too quickly. If you do that, something like this can happen. I did not continue the notch, and I kind of had a positive speed there to it, and eventually he hit me. So it's kind of complicated, right? And here we have another example of a specific aircraft that can do the notch basically without losing the lock. So you have to be really careful against the Yak-41, and when more Russian aircraft from that era as well come up to the game, it is very dangerous. As you see, as you're going to see, I can basically do a notch. I'm doing just a crank here, but I will do kind of a notch. It's not really a notch, but still, while maintaining the lock. That's why the gimbal limits of an aircraft are really important in the defensive part. It's the gimbal limits of the radar specifically of the aircraft, right? So I kind of doing a notch here. I'm not maintaining specifically 90%, but as you see, he's losing lock. It's enough for him to lose lock, and I still can maintain a lock. And while I'm trying to pass it over, I can try to get a lock again. I lost the lock there due to the chaff, and fire another missile, and then I go for that kind of situation as well. So you have to be careful with the gimbal limits of the radar, vertically and horizontally. I'm losing lock due to the chaff. Small targets with chaff can be a bit difficult to maintain a lock with these radar. But as you see, if the two targets actually know how to use cranking and notching to its full potential, while having the idea of using going cold as well and flying low as a defensive measure as well, it can be almost impossible to kill a target with radar missiles. So if both of the targets know what they're doing, you will end up in a merge, at least with these missiles that we have right now. Maybe in the future we will have more advanced missiles that will make everything a lot easier. But anyway, these are the two maneuvers that you have to worry about. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe, and I see you guys on the next one. Leave it in the comments what you thought about these maneuvers.